So it's after Ms. Dunpray. Okay, Ms. Dunpray, we're ready to receive.
So I have Ms. Murphy here with me, since she is quite familiar with ESSER as well, to support me
Yes.
in ensuring that you all get a good understanding of the information we have today. So Monica is passing around a packet for you that I got from Mr. Walters, and I received it today. That's why you didn't get it ahead of time. So you wouldn't have an opportunity to be able to review it first. So in this packet, there is information regarding the ESSER grants, ESSERs 1, 2, and 3. And the second page talks about the allowable expenses, allowable uses of the funds, and there are several, there's 12 on this page. I'm not gonna read through them all, but I want you all to have this information so you can see that there are 12 allowable uses here. And beside the grants, you can see the different grants that are used for the different allowable expenses. So it may even have an ESSER formula versus a GEAR versus a CRF versus a 1032D. So this way you can see on that page which grants can be used for which. So on the next page, it goes into that for ESSER 1, 2, and 3, that in addition to the 12 allowable uses that I just showed you for ESSER 1 formula, that there are more uses that are allowed for ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Originally, it was just ESSER 2 and 3, and now they have gone back. More recently, we just found out on Friday, that allows you to now use ESSER 1 using these additional allowable uses. So it talks about learning loss is a big one. And then underneath learning loss, it talks about the different areas in which which qualify for learning loss. So assessments, evidence-based activities, providing information and assistance to parents, and then tracking the student attendance and improving their engagement in distance education. And then on the next page are the last two, where it talks about school facility repairs and improvements, and then also inspection and testing and maintenance and repairs of buildings. And this is to improve the indoor air quality. So the next page, which talks about facility repair improvements and new constructions, you will see that I have highlighted in yellow that it says, yes, ESSER and GEAR can be used for construction. And there's a section that says, however, the department, this is the United States Education Department, discourages the using of ESSER and GEAR funds for new construction because this use of funds may limit an LEA, which is a school, ability to support other essential needs and initiatives. There are some specific hoops that we would have to jump through in order to do new construction. And because we only have a limited amount of time in which we can utilize these funds, they highly, highly, highly discourage using these funds for new construction. Just wanted to point that out. So going through the next page, it goes into a lot of guidance that's provided by the United States Education Department over what you can do in order to be able to use it for construction. I'm not gonna read through that. I'm gonna let you use that at your leisure. It's quite small, so you may need more time to look at that. And that's going through onto the next page as well. So that was the 3 pages of going through that. And then when we get to ESSER 3, with ESSER 3, we have to ensure that we consider that how we intend to use the funds will prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus, and that is allowable under the CARES Act. It is reasonable and necessary. It promotes equity, and it supports students returning to the classroom. Now on this next page for ESSER 3, it talks about that at least 20% of the money provided for ESSER 3 must be spent to address learning loss. And in these 5 categories are the items in which we have to adhere to for addressing learning loss. So we have to ensure whatever activities that we choose, they can fit into one of these 5 areas. So with ESSER III, we are projected an estimated $99 million. That means that 20%, at least $20 million, has to go towards learning loss. And that if we don't put 20 million towards our learning loss, we don't get access to the rest of the funds. That is, they go hand in hand, and that's with ESSER III only. So I just want to stress that as well. And one of the other things that we have to take into consideration is maintenance of equity. This is also new for ESSER III. And what we have to take into consideration is that we have to take our schools and rank them for a poverty level for each school. And then we have to determine that the top 25%, we can't adjust the staff or the resources that they receive, and it can't be disproportionately affected compared to any of the other schools in the district.
Right there, you was doing so good. I was following good, and then you right there, you lost me.
Okay.
You said it could be used for learning loss. And what else? Say it again.
So one of the piece that Ms. Dunpray was just describing was the maintenance of equity.
Right.
And so we have to rank all of our schools based on their percentage of poverty, the percentage of students that we serve at that particular building that are in poverty. We're familiar with this because we do the same thing for Title I. However, all of our schools are school-wide, but we still evaluate what their individual percentages are. This is saying that we have to maintain a certain level of staffing and investment in those pupils at that building. We can't have a disproportionate investment. We have to make sure that those schools that represent the top 25% of students living in poverty, that they're continued to be supported at the level to which we were supporting them prior to these funds arriving. So we looked at our list today to determine our top 2 schools, which for us is 2 schools, that's 25% of our schools that we serve. And so we have to maintain the level of investment from our general fund in those buildings, and we can't disproportionately take funds away from those 2 highest poverty schools.
So can you tell us what those 2 schools were?
We can. Brownell is our #1 school, and Pierce is #2. And so as we make decisions about staffing and leveling, we have to keep these things into consideration. This is a part of the formula.
Okay.
So I do want to clarify that we did ask the question is if we decided that we needed to consolidate buildings, would we be allowed to do so, taking this into consideration? And the answer was yes, we would just have to, again, go in and determine the poverty level of the remaining schools and ensure that in those remaining schools, we still don't disproportionately disadvantage those students.
Where are we with our Plant Moran Cressa? I know you told us, I know you done told us, Ms. Dunpray, 1,000 times, and we not blaming you. She told us, y'all. But every meeting, I gotta ask, because I can't remember, Ms. Dunpray.
Okay, so Plant Moran Cressa has completed the building utilization study. They completed that before school started. And what they're doing now is putting together the facility assessment so they can give us a capital plan. And then what they're going to do is provide that information to us as quickly as they can. And then I have asked them to be prepared to potentially do a presentation in September for the board to go over all the studies that they have done for us.
Not potentially.
I'm saying potentially September.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Potentially they might not have to come.
No, that's not what I was saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Potentially September is where I was going. The September board meeting is what I was saying.
Okay. Is there any? Oh, is it time for questions or no? I'm interrupting.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, we're gonna keep going, please.
Okay.
Okay. So one of the other things I wanted to mention is that while we're talking about maintenance of equity, one of the challenges that we are concerned about, and we have been speaking to MDE and Treasury about, is that we also have a maintenance of effort that we must adhere to, and that requires that we utilize 90% of our state and local funds contribute to the expenses that we have as a district. And so our concern is because we have so many federal funds now, and we are, our state and local funds are decreasing because we have a declining population, that it will be harder for us to be able to maintain this maintenance of effort because we have less local resources to use when we have so much federal funds. So I'm working with Treasury and MDE to try and see how do we ensure that this doesn't become a problem for us, a bigger problem for us, I shall say, because if we don't make our maintenance of effort, that decreases the amount of federal funds that we're eligible for.
Okay.
Because we're getting so much that could decrease our title allocation. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
So another requirement for ESSER III is that that was not a part of ESSER I and ESSER II, is that we do have the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services, that there's a reservation to address the academic impact of lost instructional time, and that maintenance of equity for high poverty schools, that's what we just discussed, and that there's a plan for use of the ARP, which is ESSER III funds. So now you will see the balances for our ESSER. So for ESSER I, we were allocated 9.4 million. We have been reimbursed, because remember, these are reimbursement grants. We have been reimbursed 7.9, which means we still have 1.5 million left to use, and the deadline to utilize these funds is June 30th, 2022. We'll go on to ESSER II. We have been allocated 19.2, 19.3. We have been reimbursed 14.6, $14.7 million, and we still have 4.5 left to draw from. So realize that we still have the additional 24, 25 million that will be allocated to us on or around August the 15th. And again, this is where we would have to be reimbursed. We have to spend it first and then be reimbursed for that. And we have until June 30th, 2023 to utilize those funds. For ESSER III, the estimated amount, and I still use the word estimated because they haven't given us a final allocation, is for $99,352,858. And this has not been allocated to the district yet. So we do have of around August 15th, they are going to release the application for us. And at that time, we will have to pull together how we intend to use the 20% for learning loss. Ooh. And then we'll have to put in a budget, and it has to be completed by November 15th.
I do want to just add one thing about these funds that is somewhat unique to us. These funds don't have carryover. So we've heard that as a term with Title I in our previous school years, that we have carryover. These grants have hard and fast dates that we have to adhere to. And so there is a tidings policy that goes along with each of the grants, which allows us an additional 12 months of spending outside of the grant cycle. However, those dates are those are the dates for the state. So we have an earlier date. So that's one of the difficulties as well when you have that conversation about new construction, because if you're not done, and we've all heard the term change orders in our group before on projects, but if that happens and you experience delays or pushbacks, the date of the end of the grant is the date of the end of the grant. There's no carryover, there's no opportunity to reallocate. So our plan has to be very concise, and we have to know exactly how we're going to approach and invest these funds in the timelines that we have, because there is no carryover period for these funds.
So I do want you to realize that the deadline for use of funds that I have on your slides incorporates the tidings period. So that's why it says through June 30th of 2024. That takes that into consideration, and that we don't get the entire year, but we get about 9 months. And so that's what's reflected on the slides. So for ESSER III, we have until June 30th, 2024. The next slide shows the other CARES grants that we had and the balances related to those. We had ESSER equity of I'm sorry, that's an error. I'm sorry, I updated these slides and this one did not get updated. That ESSER equity allocated number is not correct, and I can get it for you. I'll email it to you, and I'll update the slides and email it to you. So I apologize for that.
Okay,
I was
that's
trying to pull
fine.
this together rather quickly, so
I
please bear with me.
understand, that's fine, Ms.
Okay.
Dunphy. I understand what time restraints you were under.
So for the year, we had 379,289. We've been reimbursed 349,495. So we have 29,794 left. And we do have until June 30th, 2022. The 11P equity, we had 1.3 million. We've been reimbursed 1.1, and we have a little less than $200,000 left. The 103D2, we were allocated 46,000. We have been reimbursed 41, and we still have $5,000 left to spend by June 30th,
Now, let
2022.
me ask you this, when you say reimbursed, we've already received the reimbursement or we waiting to be reimbursed?
We've already received the reimbursement.
Okay.
And then the last page contains the contact information for Kevin Walters and the other gentleman, Christopher May, who assisted with putting together this slide presentation. I added the last slide so it showed you the allocated amounts for ESSER. And the last thing you'll have in this packet was an email that Kevin sent to me showing some of the uses that we cannot use the ESSER funds for. This can be quite confusing because you may say, oh, it says no to bonuses and incentives. However, there are some caveats. So please note that for any bonus that we have provided to our staff, we ensured that we received approval before we spent that. We did not do anything without approval from NDE first, and they had to approve our budget once we put it in the system before we could spend those funds. And therefore, they had to approve it and for us to be able to draw it. I just want to be clear on that. Okay, now you can ask questions.